Alright, welcome to today's tutorial. I'm Trey. And yeah, so today we're going to be scripting. Well, more or less, I'm going to be explaining the scripting. You'll be able to see the code on screen if you'd like to follow along. I decided to do it this way since I already had it prototyped and tested and know it works and everything. I decided to just leave the code as is, and instead of us hand typing it and you having to painstakingly sit there and watch me slowly type everything out, I'll just have it all here, and we could step through and go through each piece of the code, and I'll explain what's going on and how it works and all that stuff. Uh, but first, maybe I should show you what it does, because that's the fun part, right? So I've already got my map here compiled and ready to go for us. So we'll go ahead and launch the game. And we'll type in map, Nazi, zombie, and my god, I really need to get rid of this fucking goddamn keyboard. I hate this backlight. It doesn't light up the actual, like, uh, keys. It lights around the outside of the keys. It's one of those kind of keyboards. I fucking hate it because it, like, blinds me when I'm trying to look at the keys. So, like, when I'm not sure of a key and I look down at the keyboard, it kind of fucks me up. But I definitely need to get rid of this keyboard, but it is a little bit better than my clickety-clackety one I had before. And considering that one kind of broke on me anyway, this is a huge improvement. So now you've seen, uh, sorry, I rambled on there about my stupid ass keyboard for a second. You're going to see two things when I restart this level. You see Trey's tutorial, and then it slides down to the bottom. And then over there, just before our round numbers do, right? And you see it said for the name of the map, or where you would put your, like, initial text for your map, like whatever the name is, or maybe location, or that kind of stuff. You seen we had some, well, it insulted me. Anyway, but yeah, that's a piece of this code. I just put it there for testing, and I forgot to remove it, so it's there. Um, but yeah, so that's what it does. And again, you'll see our Trey's tutorial moves down there to the left-hand corner of the screen, just past where the numbers should be. And we got ourselves a little counter down there. And as you can see, as the zombies spawn in, that number rises with the zombies that are coming in. And as I kill the zombies, the number goes down. And you're going to see here in a second, this what makes mine a little bit more unique. I mean, I'm sure other people have done shit like this, but once we get below 3 zombies, it starts flickering these colors. And the same thing will apply as once the zombie starts spawning in. So if we kill all these zombies real quick, it'll stay flickering. And then once the zombies spawn in and there's 3 or more, then we're going to start seeing a change back to that dreary red that we get for our, like we get with our tallies down here on the side. And as you see, and it changes our text too every now and then. So you could see it does. It's not just a boring zombies counter. This thing has a little bit of flair to it, right? So it's a little bit more Trey, a little less corporate, if you would like to call it. So yeah, good stuff, right? So we're going to go ahead and step through the code, and I'll explain everything that's going on here, and hopefully you'll learn how to make one of these yourself. Now, it's not too hard, and I mean, yeah, you could copy and paste some code and do this yourself, but I won't be sharing the code for the one specific reason that I don't really condone copy paste, especially if you're learning, because you're not actually learning anything that way. And two, if you copy and paste and make a mistake while copy and paste it, like say you copy pasted this, right? Let's drag over this. Oops, I forgot the T. Well, Now you done fucked up because everything else is relying on this to be as it is. So, it's not going to work. Oops. Oh, I forgot, you know, I forgot the other half of the mouth and the fucking eyes. Whoops. You know, that kind of thing. That's the kind of things that happen and are harder to troubleshoot if you don't understand code and you're copying and pasting instead of learning. So I don't condone that on this channel. I will share code sometimes. Don't get me wrong, and I will post things sometimes on request. You know, but I don't like doing that because I feel like it's taking away from the experience. If you just want to jump into like, you know, having code that works and just running a mod, you're better off to go download somebody's already created mod then. There's no point in you trying to learn how to do mapping and all that shit if you're not going to learn how to program too, because you're going to need to make custom events for your custom map, and maybe you're going to want, like for instance, maybe you'll want like an ammo cache somewhere where you can refill your ammo. Um, Once you've reached a certain round, it might spawn or something like that, or whatever, or it might move into position. Because typically, what I like to do is hide it somewhere in the map, like outside of the map where you're not going to be able to get to it, and then move it to the position whenever it's okay to be used. Basically, it'll teleport there really quickly, so you wouldn't even notice it happen. You'll just see that it'll look like it just popped up there. If you happen to be standing there. So that kind of thing. Maybe you want hidden doors, stuff like that. Maybe you want doors that are. Maybe you want doors that sometimes have collision and sometimes don't, for whatever reason. Like, so yeah, that's basically it. If you're gonna get into mapping and modding and all that shit, and you're not just modding to just play other people's mods or install other people's mods, then you come to the right place. If you come to just try and get something to slap into your map and just use, you come to the wrong place. You need to learn how to do the stuff. Uh, because copy and pasting, yeah, people can help you, but eventually people are, one, they're going to get tired of trying to help you, especially if you have put very little effort into learning anything yourself. Um, and the other thing is, we've all got our own projects. We're not going to be able to, we're not, and some of us, like me, I have varying time schedules. Sometimes I have time to do shit, sometimes I don't. There's times I don't touch my maps for like months at a time, and then I come back and do some more work and then don't touch it for like a year, you know, like stuff like that. Life happens. So, if you want to do something, if you're on a quest to learn, then you've come to the right place. So, anyways, with all my rambling bullshit aside, instead of being a rambling bullshitter, let's get on to the actual code here and what's going on. So, if you've created a map before and used UGX script placer and Major's, starter script, you'll probably be familiar with most of this, except for maybe this part. Uh, so, that's where our code is actually going to be starting. Now you see I've created a variable here, and this variable is holding a string. So if you're familiar with programming languages, there's different kinds of variable types. If you get into like C++ and stuff like that, they're type dependent. So when you create a variable, you have to give it a type. So if it's a number, it has to be either an integer, float, or double, depending on what you're doing with it. I think there may be a couple other different variants that are rarely used or less used, but are still available to you. Then you've got your strings, like what we've got here. And then you've got your characters and stuff like that. So you're not going to have to worry about that too much, but the point of that was to explain that this is a variable and this is something that you're going to use a lot in object-oriented programming. You're going to be creating a lot of variables, a lot of functions. You're going to be doing a lot of stuff with them. So that's what that is. Now, our buddy here, thread. So what thread does is when you put thread, this is a function, by the way. I should probably cover that first. this is a function, and what we're doing on this line here is calling a function, right? The function that we created. You could call a function at pretty much any point in here, uh, you know, within reason. I mean, like, you couldn't do it here, but, like, you know, within main, you could call it, and then in some cases you might call it and then have other functions call other functions from there instead of messing with main all like that. But for this example, we've placed it up here. And to be honest, it's perfectly fine here because we're only calling these two functions and everything else is handled below. So, I kind of rambled on again, but the point of thread is to run two pieces of code or multiple pieces of code, not just two. This could be pretty much an infinite number until the computer crashes, I guess. But, this will run this function simultaneously while other stuff is running. So that's what thread does. So as you see here, they got level thread, which in this context would mean the level itself. Now, if you're looking at something like this is a variable, right? So if you see something that's level dot, now it's still the same thing. It means that it's throughout the whole level. It's accessible throughout the whole level. So pretty much any of your scripts. Well, let me back up. Not any of your scripts. Anywhere within this script, you could reference or not reference, but you can make use of this variable, right? So I could make a function and I could do something with this variable without having to tell it that this variable exists, which is what we're doing here. So you'll see tut HUD, which is the HUD that we're creating, right? And we'll see that in these braces we've got text, which is our buddy we just created over here and is magically materialized right there, right? So what does this do? Well, we're telling it that we're giving it some information. That's all we're doing right here. But you do need to make note, this doesn't have to match, so whatever, I could name this Dick if I wanted and pass Dick into here. And when I come down here, you'll see that it says text right there. But if I put Dick here and pass Dick in, it's still going to work just fine. Because when you prototype the function definition, whatever is in this brace in the definition is what is being sent in. That's what it is. So we send in Dick in this case, even though it doesn't say that. Well, we're sending Dick into this fucking hole, right? Okay? Yeah, there you go. There's your joke, right? So we're sending Dick into this function. But when it comes down here, it can still say text because whatever we pass in here is going to be what this is. So I could pass it something completely different. I could pass it some other bullshit, and it doesn't matter. Because the only thing that depends on it actually saying text is down here. You can see the usage of text there, and so on and so forth. So, so that doesn't have to match. You could pass this whatever you want, but you do have to make sure that whatever function you're using or creating takes a parameter so you can make use of it. Because if this didn't take a parameter and you pass that in, it would give you a script compile error, and it's just not going to do anything. You're not going to be able to do nothing with it because you passed it in here, and let's say the compiler didn't bitch about it. Well, it doesn't know that this exists because it doesn't know it's supposed to be taking a parameter in. So that's what that does. So now that we've got that out the way, we've explained what this little shit here is. Now the same thing here, we're just threading another function. So what that's going to do is this is going to be threaded. Then it's going to, so let's step back one more. We're going to create our text. When it steps through the code, it goes line by line. So we created our text is there. We called a function that we created down there, and we passed it our text. And so when this hits this thread and it goes to do this, it's going to be still executing through the main shit, but it's going to run off and it's going to go down here and run this simultaneously. Same with this. It's going to take this, run off down here, and it'll run that simultaneously, right? So, that out the way, we've got the basic fundamentals set up for what we need to do to create our HUD. Now, the reason I didn't just hand type this time and I just left it in here as is and decided to step through it is because it's a lot to remember. I'm bad at memorizing every single line of code, and I don't have a second monitor, so I can't like really use that, and I'm painfully slow at typing. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I'm not that great at it, so you know, it is what it is. But that shortens the video a lot and makes way for me to actually explain more. So, you know, that's kind of the idea here. So now we've ran off from up here to this function. So now it's running this. And what we're doing here is we've, as you established probably from what I just explained, if not, I'm going to explain it again anyway. We've created a variable there, and I wanted to clean that up because that kind of bothered me. So we've created a variable called HUD. And we're telling it that to create a simple HUD. So what's going on here with this equals to a function? So when you set a variable equal to a function, it's not actually equal to the function. It's equal to the result of the function. So that's something to keep in mind. You're not just going to be able to just take a function and just slap it into any variable and do other stuff with it later down the line and it just work the way you think it is. You have to understand how it does this. So we will get into a deeper explanation of this later, because there's some code down below here that's actually going to help with that explanation. But all you need to know for now until we get to that point is HUD equals create simple HUD isn't equal to, it's not equaling this to the function. It's equaling it to the result of the function. So just keep that in mind, and I'll explain a little bit more later when we get to the part where that's going to be relevant. So HUD dot horizontal align. So this is where I need to explain some more stuff here. So we've created our buddy HUD, right? Our buddy HUD is in the hut. He's hanging out at Pizza Hut. I don't know, maybe the Nut Hut. I don't know. One of the two. Anyways, so our buddy HUD here. Well, what's this dot horizontal line? Well, as you probably gathered from what this line of code says here, this is going to horizontally align our HUD element, or HUD. So what we're going to, but what the dot and all that, okay? The dot, basically if you do like HUD dot, right? This is telling it this is the HUD, and then it's this dot means, so now get this member variable. Put it in your head as that's what that means. Now there are instances where it means something else, but in this context, if you see code that looks like this, chances are it means get that member variable. So basically we're creating that member variable right here. Now these member variables, you know, are actual things here. Like when you go to type this out, it'll actually IntelliSense and pull this up for you anyway. So this is a variable that already exists for HUD, you know, development. But what I'm trying to get at here is HUD dot. We're saying that we want the HUD and we want its member variable. This is something that would be easier to explain if I had the ability to show classes, but GSC does not have classes, so yeah, about that. Anyways, so this is just a member variable. So think of it like this. It is a variable attached to this object. So the HUD is an object. This is its accompanying variable. And it has several of these. And when you get into object-oriented programming, like doing JavaScript or C++ or anything, you're going to make heavy use of classes, and you're going to have tons of these probably. So, like, and you can see here, we got a bunch of them. So, I'm not going to go over all of them, but because they're kind of almost self-explanatory. So I'm not going to really explain too much, but I wanted to explain the finer points. Like this HUD here, we're telling it we want the HUD and we want its member variable. And we want to set its member variable equal to center, which is a string value. But the string actually in the background in the engine has some meaning. So like to us, well, what if I put dick in there? And it's not going to do anything. You could put cock and balls in there all you want. It's not going to do anything because it isn't it isn't something that the engine was programmed or the scripting language was designed with. This is basic stuff that you'll find in like JavaScript. It'll have center, middle, or like that kind of thing, just to simplify positioning. But in the background, there's a lot more code executing that actually, does all this. This is just a basically way of making our lives easier. And then we got our vertical alignment. Now, as you'll notice, we've got for horizontal, we've got center, and for vertical, we've got middle. Now, why is that? That I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I feel like they probably could have used center for either or, but I'm thinking the reason they did that is probably because when you're talking about horizontal alignment, like left and right, you're going to want to center things, not to the left, not to the right, whatever, right? And with up and down, I'm thinking the problem is probably the clash of using the same word to define those things on different axes. It's probably what's going on there, if I had to guess. Because you can't use two variables to do two different things. In GSC, you could take a variable and, set it equal to something and then later on in the function set it to something else. That's perfectly valid. But here, the background stuff that's actually doing this is written in C++, so it probably has something to do with the naming convention and making it a little bit easier to distinguish which one is for which axis. So I don't know. Maybe somebody from Treyarch can tell us about that. But yeah, I'm not from Treyarch, so I can't tell you about that. HUD.y, again, the same thing, member variable. So we'll just go ahead and gloss through all this real quick. Member y, we're setting the position on the y-axis for where this is going to be. So 100 is going to be where we just seen it whenever I showed you the demo, right? HUD.foreground. This one here is a little bit important. If you set this to 0, I'm not 100% sure about this now, so don't quote me. But I'm pretty sure if you set this to 0, it gets hidden in the background. So it's behind like the game itself, what's being rendered on the screen. So basically it makes it invisible. Same thing with alpha. Alpha does the same thing. But alpha is a little different. You could set levels of transparency. So say we wanted to change that from the way it was to where it's super like opaque, right? We could do like 0.2123333 or some bullshit like that. We could pass it something like that, and it'll give it a transparency value that makes it, more transparent than what it was. So we'll go with 0.9 for now. But anyway, foreground and background, this is just a 1 or 0 thing. You can't do decimal numbers with that. It's either it is or it isn't. That's basically what that is. The alpha you could set, if you set it to 0, it doesn't show. If you set it to 1, it shows. So there's that. Color. I don't need to color. God damn, I don't need to color. Jesus Christ. All right. I don't need to cover this too much. Because again, it's just another member variable. But what I do want to cover is, see, we got these braces now. And what that's telling it is we're passing it multiple values, or in this case, a vector value. And what this vector is the different levels. So the first one is R, the second one is G, and the third one is B. RGB, right? And that's pretty much the same in all scripting languages. So this is the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue. That's what those are. And these could be anywhere from 0 to 1 and any decimal in between. So like 0.499999 if you like, whatever. So anything between 0 and 1, right? So HUD set text. So what's going on here? Well, we're not doing a dot or any. What's with this? So HUD set text. What we're doing is we're telling this variable to call the set text function. Basically, this variable is calling the set text function. But in actuality, what's going on is actually kind of the opposite. So HUD's here and set text is here, but it's actually taking this HUD element and giving it this text value. So it would basically be the same as saying, HUD is equal to this. But if you put it equals here, it's going to fuck this all up. So then you're probably going to have a bug where your shit just disappears and doesn't work. So I'm not really sure how to explain that. There's not really an easy way to explain that, but I tried my best. So moving on. Same thing's going on here. So with fade over time, this is going to do the same thing as what we saw with the zombie number. Flashes the color and then it finally settles on a color. This fade over time. Now you're probably wondering what this number in here is. This is the time, the amount of time. So 1.5 seconds. Right? This is in seconds. So 1.5 seconds is how long it's going to take to do this fade, this transition, right? And then we're going to set the alpha to 1, which if you want it to flash on the screen, you would change this to 0, and then later on you would change the alpha back, right? Or you might do this and then do another fade and blah blah blah. You could copy and paste this infinitely and just keep alternating back and forth if you wanted. But you also have to make note too that when it does this fade over time, it's kind of in a waiting game right there. So like, say you had a bunch of these, now it's 1.5, now it's 3, now it's like 6, so on and so forth. So that extends the amount of time that it's going to linger doing whatever it's doing. And then you've got down here, you've got a wait of equal amount of time. Which honestly, I typically, if I'm going to do a wait for something like this, like I'm waiting for this fade to finish, then I would probably do like 1.7 just to give it a couple extra milliseconds to make up for delay. So I would make this 1.7 and that 1.5. But that's me personally. In this case, I didn't. I just left 1.5 in there for simplicity's sake, because there's no real need to explain that. That's more of a preference thing. It really depends on what you're doing, on if you want the wait to be equal to whatever time period you want something to do something in, like move an object, for instance. In those cases, you would definitely want to give it some leeway, so you'd want to give it like 1.7 if it's going to take it 1.5 seconds to move the object to said location. Just to give it some slack between the next section of code. So for a fact it's fully completed its translation, or whatever, transition, whatever you want to call it. Uh, so again, we've got another one. This is HUD scale, and we've seen that up here. Did we see that up here? Yeah, we did, right there. And this is how it went from being big up on the screen when it was under the zombie number to going small as it was going down into the corner. I changed the scale here, did a fade over time, and this is the color it's going to fade into, which is that lovely red. Okay. And now HUD move over time. Now this one's one that I need to talk about. It's the same thing as fade over time in terms of what you give it, and that is a time in seconds. But the way this works is kind of strange in my opinion, but I mean, maybe it's just I'm looking at it at a weird angle or something. But when you call this, and it does this, move the object over time, in this case the HUD. Well, this is a HUD function anyway. This is meant for HUDs. I didn't make it, it's Treyarch's thing, but so this is a function that's meant for use with HUDs. So I passed it 1.75 seconds, and over those 1.75 seconds, this is going to be the values that it transitions to. So it's going to go from the position it currently is before it executes this to taking a transition time and moving to that designated position, like I said, over that course of time. And then again, you could do a wait. I did a wait 3. Probably could cut that back a little bit. Actually, I'm going to just do 1.75 just because it doesn't need that much slack. Now, HUD fade over time, again, the same thing. Alpha, same thing. We already know what wait is. Wait is built-in functionality into the gaming engine, and it takes time in seconds. It could be either written like this with the braces and the time inside, or it could be written like this down here, where it's just the time next to it and the semicolon. It doesn't matter. Either way works, and they're both perfectly valid. The compiler will not complain about either way. So next, we've got text equals. Now this is where we're going to get into that explanation I was talking about up here about setting variables to functions and how that actually works. So now that we've reached this point, we're changing the text from the text that we passed in up here. You know, that dick that we passed in. You know, that isn't dick, but okay. So we're going to take that vagina we passed in, right? And now we're overwriting that. So technically, if you want to get technical, this value here isn't this value anyway. It's copying this and pasting it into that function is basically what it's doing. You'll never see that, but that's what's going on in the background. It's copying that variable. So we're not actually modifying this variable at all. We're actually, when we get to this point, what we're doing is we're actually taking the variable that is the parameter of this function. So I could, like I talked about, you can name this dick whatever the fuck you want. You could pass whatever the hell you want in here. But down here in the prototype of the actual function itself, it's always going to be this. And you can overwrite that later too. So like I said, we pass the text here. Then after a period of time, we get down here. Now we're overwriting it. So let's get on with the explanation, right? So text equals zombie message, right? And like I said, when you see something like this, you need to put it in your head that it is not setting the variable to the function. That's not what's happening. What is happening is it is setting the variable to the result of the function. So now we could go down here. We're going to see what this zombie function is doing, or zombie message, I mean. So inside a zombie message, we have ourselves some variables, which is, in this case, it's an array. So it's one variable that has multiple different values in different positions in the variable. Um, so that's probably the easiest way to explain that. So what we got going on here is basically a bunch of different strings that show up that say like how many zombies are remaining in different ways. Um, we've got this variable random, which then takes a random integer. Damn, these fucking hiccups need to go away. That just like gas bubble, it keeps traveling up and down. It's really annoying. It's kind of fucking me up a bit. But so random int range, and what that is that's a function built into the engine. It's probably one that they lifted from C++, I'd imagine, because C++ has one like that. I think it's just called random int though, but whatever, it's the same thing. So basically all it does is it takes a random number from whatever the first value you put in here is to the second value. Now, if you're not used to seeing, if you're not real good with scripting or coding or anything like that, or even if you are and you don't fully understand it, I'll explain what's going on in this. This random int range is a function, and it's taking in two variables. It's the minimum number that this can end up equaling, and the maximum number. So arrays have different slots, right? So what we passed it here is the amount of slots in this array, because anytime you see dot size, that means that it is trying to get the amount of slots available for, that variable. And in this case, we have 6. But they range from 0 to 5 because computers start counting at 0, unlike humans. And unless you're writing in like one of them weird scripting languages that starts at 1 for whatever reason, some of them do that. But I've never actually encountered one myself. I just know they're out there. And then, yeah, so that's all that is. But now this is going to be equal to whatever this shits out. And every time that this function is called, it's going to shit out something different. Well, at least that's the hope. Sometimes it might actually shit out the same thing a couple times in a row. But it's neither here nor there. You probably won't even notice. So for the purposes of what we're doing, that's perfectly fine. We don't got to make our own randomization bullshit for it. Now we'll get down to this statement, and that'll bring us on to the finale of the explanation of what's going on here. So this return statement, we're returning messages, but why do we got this in here? Well, because that's, like I said, this picks a random number between, in this case, 0 and the amount of slots in this array. So this random number is what slot in this array it's picking and sending back up here. So now the text is equal to whatever random slot in the array it sent me. And then that's that. So now our text equals whatever string it decided to send that time. And that's that. That actually sums it up pretty good. So when you're setting something equal to something, chances are the function is returning something. And in this case, you could see it's not taking any parameters, but that doesn't stop you from being able to return something at the end of it. And what it does is it's returning that here. So we've returned our value of whatever string it decides to give us this time. We're not going to go over the counter, just a simple variable. It was to fix a bug where it would flicker through all these texts really fast, and that was really annoying. So I'm not going to go over that. The for loop. Now, the for loop set up in this manner, it means an infinite loop. So it would be the same as while 1, while true, whatever. So you could see infinite loop setup like this. I'll go ahead and type one out now. You could see them set up like this, where it's while 1. Or you could see them like this. Oh, whoops. I hit the wrong keys there because it's fucking blinding ass light on this goddamn piece of shit. Alright. And then while true. I fucking hate this keyboard. I really need to fucking do so. I need to just open it up and remove the lights. Like, fuck those lights. They don't help me. If it was consistently on, it might be easier for me to see the keys I'm trying to touch in the dark, but yeah, that's not the case. It's like doing this pulsating fucking thing. And I know there's software I could download and install to change that, but I'm just not. I don't want to install extra software. Fuck all that. Like, just fucking, like, give me a button on the keyboard to change the pattern or shut it off or something, instead of making me download a proprietary fucking software. Fuck you, SteelSeries. Anyways, now that I'm done ranting about that, so basically that's what this infinite loop is. It's the same as if you wrote either of these. While 1 and while true. These are both the exact same statement. So I'll explain while loops, even though we're not going to be using one in here. I'll explain them real quick. So while loop could be, if you're using it in an infinite loop context at least. One basically in computers, and in this instance, means true. And 0 would mean false. And if you tell a while loop while true in any form, whether it be a 1 or you pass true directly into it, it's always evaluating, because think of it like an if statement. It's evaluating this. So if this is just always true, then it's always going to run. So the only way to break it then is to maybe, if you had like an if statement later on that checks for a specific condition, and then if that condition's met, then it breaks out of the loop. That kind of thing. So they are pretty useful, but we're not going to cover while loops in their entirety here. So I'm not going to cover like other instances of use cases and like other ways you might see them. It was just to explain that you could do this you could do the same thing that I did here with this, with a while loop. The same way though, you know, it'd be while 1 and then your braces and then your code in between. So syntactically, it's pretty much exactly the same. There's a lot of syntax you'll notice that there's not much to the syntax for the most part. It's pretty forgiving too in scripting languages, unlike C++, where like if you come from a scripting language and you can do shit like this, where it doesn't like to accept that very much. I mean, you can do it, but it's a little iffy, in my experience at least. But I haven't messed with C++ in like probably 5-6 years, and back then I sucked at coding, so maybe it's just me. User error. We'll chop it up to that. So we've got our infinite loop. And it's looping through all of this stuff. This is where it actually gets to the meat and potatoes. After it does its little transition, it moves it down in the corner, it changes the color, it sets us a message, then it goes into this for loop, but basically a while loop, same thing. This infinite loop, where it constantly cycles through this code here. It no longer needs to go through any of that. If you wanted to program functionality where it moves at some point, you could do that using some more additions to this. I encourage you to go out and maybe type this stuff in and fuck with it yourself and make your own concoctions up if you want, but we're just going to explain the main stuff. So once we go inside of here, we got an if statement that's checking a counter that I created up here. And the reason for this counter is because if I don't do something like this, it's just going to keep flickering through all these messages really fast, and it'll be really irritating. So that on top of rainbow effects, yeah, some people might get sick from that. So there's that, and it just annoyed the fuck out of me, and I don't like things not being my way. So that's just kind of, I did this just as a kind of bug fix, I guess you could say. So nothing too special. But I will talk about the if statement just to explain it. So this is the syntax of our if statement here, right? We've got our if, we've got our braces, the condition inside, and then we've got the code to execute in between these braces. And like I talked about with the while loop, if statements are very similar in that way. It only executes this code if this evaluates to being true. So in this case right now, if we was to just start this code up and we was to like lag the fuck out of it to where it took a whole second for this to go to 1, it's going to take a while before this is going to evaluate to true, right? Now, in real time, it's going to execute really fast, and this is probably going to be like a matter of like 4 or 5 seconds or something like that. It's not going to be really crazy, maybe 10 at best. It depends on if it's choking on other code in other places or something like that. It's more dependent on that. It's not going to be a consistent timing, but it is enough to where it will constantly flicker through the messages at a rate that's tolerable. Um, and not give you a random message every 2 fucking milliseconds, which is really annoying. So, yeah. So if the condition evaluates to being true in here, then it does what's in there. If not, then it skips it. And we'll get into that more here in a second because we got if and an else statement. So that'll be a good chance to explain that. Now we've got count equals zombie counter. Again, we're not going to cover that because we just covered that with the text in the zombie messages, right? It's doing the same thing. The zombie counter is just getting the zombies for us, and then it's returning the amount of zombies that there are. So it's returning the number of entities to us. And there's a reason why we have it where we have it inside the infinite loop. Because if you don't have it inside of here, let's say we remove this 4, right, and we just ran all the rest of this code. Once it reaches the end, that's it. It's done with the function. And whatever number it was stuck on, if you didn't destroy the HUD, I commented that part out because I'm not using it. And I don't intend to. Then it's just going to be stuck at whatever you put up on the screen. So if it, would it hit that code, you had 4 zombies, it's going to be stuck like that. And you're changing text, all that, no, not going to work. Changing colors, not going to work either, probably. It might work. The changing color thing, no, the changing color thing won't work either because that's part of the infinite loop. So no, that won't work either. You could manually change the color a bunch of times, but why would you want to do that? That's what the point of all of this and learning how to do it the right way is. But anyway, so now we move on to the zombie. We can move past this because we already explained how that works. So now we're on to if and else. So how this works is pretty much the same as what I explained with the if statement. If this condition evaluates to true, which is why they call it an if statement. If this condition is true, then execute this. And then if it's in a case where it's not, then the else statement is basically like a default. So if this doesn't evaluate true, then it just does this instead. And what's going on here? Well, we're changing the color to the colors of the R, G, and B to random values every time it goes through this. So, every time it goes through and this evaluates the true. So every time there is less than 3 zombies, so 2, 1, 0, anything like that. You could change this number however you want. If you want it to be below 10 zombies, you want it to be below 5, whatever, you could do that. What number goes in there is totally up to you when you create your own version of this. So yeah, the else is basically a default. And I don't have an example for today. That'll probably be in a later tutorial. But switch statement would be something that comes to mind, or switch case statement, whatever you prefer to call it. Where you're gonna have it. There's a thing called default. So you could have cases 1, 2, 3, 4, or have them equal to strings, whatever. However you set your cases up. But you could have a fallback in case none of those cases are a case whenever it hits that code. And that fallback would be basically the same as what this else does. If this doesn't evaluate to true, same thing in the switch. If none of those cases are the case, then it'll go to the default. And think of the else as basically default. So if you got an if statement, you want it to do one thing, and you don't have any other parameter for it otherwise, then you could just use the if statement and leave things as is. In my case, I want it to change the color of the HUD constantly when the zombies are below a certain number, and when they're not, I want the HUD to just be that nice, gritty, bloody red. And that way, then you know you're in danger, basically. That's kind of what that insignia, you know, below a certain number, you should be safe to run around and do your Easter eggs and all that stuff, right? So that was the idea. You might not look at the counter all the time, but you could just see the colors flashing down in the corner while you're running around, and you don't even have to look at it. You know, okay, I'm cool. I could go do my stuff. That was the idea, and I just thought it looked cool. So, all that explained. Now I could explain what's going on with this HUD set text. We already know what that does. We're not going to worry about what it does, but we're going to worry about what's inside of here, because some people may not be familiar with this. But this is how you append strings together in most scripting languages. JavaScript allows you to do this too. But so we're taking the text of our zombie message, and we're sending the HUD that text, and we're appending this string that's static. There's no need to make, like, I don't plan on changing this. This is going to be the same all the time. It's just 2 dots. So I appended the string to the text. Then I appended the number of the zombies to that. So basically these are just appended to each other. That's basically what that does. That's shorthand for appendage. I don't know if there's a longhand in GSC. I'm not sure if there is in JavaScript either, but yeah, that's basic appendage. That's how you would append multiple text strings together without having to write like each individual string, right? Or do a whole bunch of if statements and spaghetti code to get the same thing. That's basically what that is. It's a way to prevent you from making spaghetti. Which, you know, sometimes spaghetti's good, but not in your code. Trust me, not in your code. I made spaghetti code intentionally one time, and it wasn't fun. Especially when I had to go back and try and figure out what it did later. And why I did it that way. But irrelevant anyways. And that's really it for this function. Like, that's really all the bread and butter. I've gone over everything. Like, I mean, this here is the same as that. I just commented it out when I made the better version of it, where it appends this to this and this, you know, instead of just this and appending the text, which would actually be incorrect now because it would be count now. That was before I changed the way the function worked and added stuff to it, like, you know, the flickering colors and all that. This was how it worked when I made the test round version. And I changed some things since then, so that code's pretty invalid anyway. It would just show you a message. It would say zombies left and then a random message. So that wouldn't be what you want to see. You know, zombies left chode nuggets. That doesn't tell me how many's left, but okay. You know, whatever, right? Now, there ain't much else to go over. We've already basically covered these by covering this, and that was kind of the point of this, was not to have to make a whole shit ton of functions that we're going to have to cover individually. Something fairly simple that you could do. You know, you could go without this and just make your strings up in here somewhere and just pass it one string, not do all the fancy stuff I did here. But where's the fun in that? So Anyways, that should be pretty much it. I've explained everything I needed to explain here. I've shown you how what my code does and how it works, and I also sent the message up here. So whenever I start the map, as you've seen when I started earlier, as you'll see here in a second again. Well, what the fuck? Are you not taking my goddamn inputs? Are we gonna work right? Thank you. Keep wanting to type the name of the last map I was working on in here because I was working on that for like 2 years, so I always go to type the wrong thing in. But yeah, you see zombies left instead of the name of the map. Yeah, I kind of just put that there. But yeah, it'll the same thing every time I reset. Same thing as the message for down in the bottom after it moves from Trey's tutorial. Yeah, see, bastards breathing, and it got the same message down there in the bottom conveniently, which I think may be a result of code timing or something, or maybe just like I didn't really optimize the randomization to stop it from spitting the same thing out twice in a row. I never really bothered to write code to stop that. So, but it's not going to matter because for what it's doing, are you going to care if it says bastards breathing twice? You're not even going to notice because it's just going to be on the screen for longer. That's all that's going to happen. It's not going to matter what shows up there. What's going to matter is does it work? That's what really matters here. If you want to do all that fancy making it to where it doesn't show a message twice, then you can, but I don't see a point in that. That's kind of the point of randomizing it. Maybe it goes from zombies left to bastards breathing back to zombies left, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just for fun, you know. And as you add more and more things in to as you add more and more strings to that array anyway, that's going to be more and more messages you'll have, so that'll be less and less chances you'll have of getting the same message anyway. So, that's totally more of a preference. Do you want to pursue trying to, make it to where it doesn't show the same message twice? But then you got the problem of, you know, it would basically have to go in some kind of linear fashion then. So what would be the point of randomizing it? Because you're not allowing it to show messages twice. You're going to have to remove some messages from the list until it's time to start over again. And that's just, nah, fuck all that. But anyways, that's that. I've explained everything that you should need to know about creating a HUD. This is for a simple HUD. This is for text HUD. I didn't cover this set shader. You would pass this like the name of a shader. So like, I don't know one offhand, but like, like your Juggernaut icon that shows up when you buy Jug and stuff like that. That's what those are. You set a shader and then you give it a size in pixels. It's usually 64 by 64, so it would be like, for instance, name. I will cover this just real quick briefly because it is a part of the HUD thing. And then 64 and 64, right? So, and that's how that should look. But this will be the name of the image, icon that you want to place on the screen. So if you wanted to do an icon one, you could do something like that. But there's a lot of extra setup involved in that, and you're probably gonna have to make your own icon and stuff, and get it into the game, and then fuck around with it for a while before it actually works. So maybe I'll cover that in another tutorial later. The next one I got planned is we're gonna make a weapons cache, kind of like what you would see in like Battle Royale, like in what was it, Modern Warfare 2, or I don't even remember which one I played. First Modern Warfare, where there's those big boxes that are just filled with ammo you can walk up to and you can fill your ammo up. We're going to make one of those. Um, so that'll be the next video. I plan to cover making one of those. And that should be kind of interesting. The same thing, we're going to make an interactable, in that one we're going to make an interactable trigger. We're going to interact with it. It's going to give us ammo. Maybe we'll make it print, different messages. Maybe we'll make it work to where, it's like a, like got a scarcity mechanic. Like, so like, say you got a bunch of zombies on the screen and you go to buy ammo from that thing. Maybe it jacks the price up because hey, there's a lot of people needing a lot of ammo right now, and get all these zombies, and then when the well dries up and there's not that many zombies and the demand for ammo is a little bit lower, then maybe it'll decrease the price, kind of like a real market, right? So that's kind of the idea I've got going for the next one. I will be getting to writing the code for that soon, probably tonight, tomorrow, sometime soon. And then I'll do my testing, make sure everything's working properly, and I'll walk you through the process of doing that. That one we are going to have to do some mapping because we're going to need some kind of object to represent our ammo cache. And maybe what we'll do is we'll make it only be available at certain times, like maybe every X amount of rounds, and maybe we'll make that a random number between like 1 and 3 or something like that, where every X amount of rounds this ammo cache might be available, and then when it's not, it disappears somewhere into the map where you can't see it, or access it. So, so there's that. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into trying to spawn stuff because that, I don't know, the spawning code's kind of funky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. So I just prefer to hide things when I'm not using them. So I'll just like make it jump to a location way out in the sky or something where you're never gonna see it or be able to get to it, or like way below the map. Someplace where you're not gonna notice it. And not be able to gain access to it, by mistake, or when you're not intended to. Plus, there's also, I could disable the triggers to where even if you could get to it, it wouldn't matter anyway. That's the great thing about scripting. You could script it to work however you want. So, like, if it's out in the sky and it's not supposed to be accessible, say somebody uses no clip and gets to it, well, can't access it, the trigger don't work. So, shit out of luck, bud. Or you could just do some trolley shit where you send it off in the sky, and if somebody no clips to it to get ammo, which they're no clipping, they're probably cheating anyway, so they probably got infinite ammo. So, like, what would be the point? If you're going that far to get to an ammo cache that's out in the sky or way below the map somewhere, then, maybe you deserve a prize, but I think in my case, I like to be a little bit devious with my prizes, and the prize for you activating the trigger when you're not supposed to will be that the price is ridiculously high. So your constellation prize for all your efforts is just a lot of pain in your fucking balls. But yeah, that wraps it up for this one. I hope I explained this well enough for any newcomers and gave enough context for anything that people don't understand about scripting. That was more the aim of the video rather than, didn't want to do all the hand typing and stuff, so I just left the prototype code that I made in here and decided I would just step through it and explain what's going on. Because it's shown on screen quite a bit throughout here. If you want to pause the video and copy the code, type the code out for yourself into your own script and use it, you feel free to do so. Every section of the code is available here. I'm not going to be, like I said, I don't condone giving scripts out because it doesn't really encourage learning. You learn by actually typing it. It's like a repetition thing. It's kind of like learning how to play the game in the first place, right? At first you suck. You play, you get better, you get better. Same thing here. Same thing with anything in life. Practice, you get better. So, with that being said, go ahead and make your own funky zombie counters and change the colors of them however you want. Change however many zombies you want it to be before it changes colors. Or just remove that if you want. Make it more simple, you know. Make it more minimalist. Make it more extravagant. Whatever you want to do. You know, if you need any help, leave comments. If you like the video, like it, comment, subscribe, whatever. It all helps. I like it. Just show me that my efforts ain't vain, because I don't make money off this shit. You know, I would like to see that people are interested in it. You know, even if you're not going to code yourself, even if you're just watching just for some ambient noise. You know. I'm gonna try to keep bringing you more shit. You know, I'm gonna do more World at War. I got some cyberpunk stuff planned. I'm still working on that video. That video's been in the oven for a while, but I do have a mod I'm releasing with it. It's a script mod, but it's not gonna be. You know, if you noticed anything about me through some of my other videos with World at War, I like to make pretty devious scripts. So, um, you know, this one here was more wholesome, I guess you could say. Yeah, hate that word, but anyways, you know, a lot of the stuff that I did, like, I'll just give you a little tour of some of the fucking scripts I made. So, yeah, this one. uh, this one here is not very pleasant. As you can see in the comments here, yeah, increase the zombies' move speed. They all run. Um, yeah, they come out in bigger numbers. You know, you're not gonna ever get one that walks. They all run, like they gotta go take a shit. Um, you know, yeah, there's that code too. But yeah, so there's that. But yeah, I like to make games harder, not easier. So I'm not going to spoil the mod or the video, but let's just say the video is me playing through the game in a very devious way that's not very uh, friendly. Uh, I will spoil the mod a little bit. It's right here, actually. I called it malware. Yes, I called it malware. So everybody downloading my mod can feel uncomfortable while they install it. But no, it's not malicious. It's just malicious to the player. It's not malicious in any other way. I don't write malicious code. I'm not skilled enough to do that anyway. I think I would probably, if I were to do that, I would probably make a attempt and end up botching my own computer doing it. So, uh, yeah, let's not talk about the time I accidentally gave myself a fucking BIOS virus on an old computer way back in like 2005. But yeah, we're not going to talk about that. It was a computer I got out the trash anyway, so I didn't care about it. It was just I was fucking around with like one of those websites that they host like old different kind of malicious attacks for researchers to go through, and like it's for educational purposes. You could see how it works and what it did, and uh, what its intended purpose was, shit like that, you know, and teach you. It's mostly for people who are security nerds and are way better at this stuff than I am, to go in and make security vulnerability patches so stuff like that can't happen again. But yeah, I would downloaded one. I meant to open it up to view the code, and I double clicked it, and I installed it on my own computer, and computer worked fine until I reset it. Then it fucked my BIOS, and my BIOS wouldn't read a hard drive. It wouldn't read. Couldn't tell if there was a graphics card connected, which that computer didn't have one. It was just the onboard bullshit. Um, yeah, it infected the BIOS and fucked it. It was I couldn't save it, so I just threw it out. But it went right back to where I got it from, the garbage. So enough of my waffling. I'm gonna get off of here, and I hope this helped you. Happy scripting, and I'll see you in the next one.